So it was very meaningful to me. Okay, so now time for Zach Weinstein. He's one of the co-chairs of the East Bay Democratic Socialists of America's Labor Committee. In his day job, he's a union organizer at a national healthcare union and a member of the Communications Workers of America. He's also a member of Bay Area Labor for Palestine, and that's a grassroots group of local union members organizing to push their unions to stand in solidarity with Palestine. So there you go, Zach.
Okay, great. Nice to see everyone out here. I saw a lot of you earlier at the Alameda and El Cerrito ceasefire rally. So what I wanted to talk to folks a little bit about is efforts within the labor movement to stand in solidarity with Palestine. Really quickly, don't want to assume that everybody here is familiar with the Democratic Socialists of America. It's the largest socialist organization in the United States since the 1930s. Here in the East Bay, we have about 2,000 dues-paying members. It's a Democratic member-run organization. And our labor committee, which I'm one of the co-chairs of, is tasked with carrying out all the activities of our local chapter relating to the labor movement, which for socialists, as a lot of you know, is a lot of what we're interested in doing. And more on that later. But I wanted to explain a little bit about what Bay Area Labor for Palestine is, how it came to be, what we've been up to, and what is next. So Bay Area Labor for Palestine, as Marcia mentioned, is really a grassroots new formation that came about after it became clear that Israel was about to launch a genocidal campaign in Gaza. A number of us wanted to organize in our unions to get them to take positions in solidarity with Palestine. So the first thing that we said we wanted to do was to plan some kind of labor rally for Palestine, and we drafted a template resolution for union militants to try to pass through their unions. The template had 3 demands. First was an end to U.S. military aid to Israel. The next was an immediate ceasefire. And the third was to end Israeli apartheid and the occupation and siege of Palestinian land. And these demands were basically written to be coming from the union and directed at elected officials who they had supported or endorsed. So we were trying to put pressure on, U.S. elected officials. And it also included a call for the union to get on board for a labor rally in support of Palestine. So we basically just planted that flag sometime in earlier mid-October and started meeting weekly. And dozens of people started coming to our meetings, most of whom were union members, some of whom were from groups like Palestinian Youth Movement or Arab Resource and Organizing Center, or AROC for short. And in mid-December, we did come together and hold a Bay Area Labor for Palestine rally. I'm sure some of you were there. About 2,000 people came out. It was endorsed by over a dozen union locals. As far as we know, it was the first action of its kind in solidarity with Palestine the labor movement. And it was the most unions, as far as anyone involved knows, who would ever come out in support of not just a ceasefire, but the rally explicitly had those 3 demands: end the occupation, U.S. military aid, permanent ceasefire. So we didn't just organize unions around kind of the minimum demand, but kind of challenged folks to do more. And we were honestly surprised at how many unions were willing to put their name on that, which really, I think, underscores how important it is to, push for, you can't always get everything you want, but to not just stick to the minimum and see how people respond. And so we've played now that we've been in existence for a little under 3 months, we've played a direct or indirect role in a number of unions, either adopting a version of our resolution or endorsing our rally that effectively made the same demands. Those unions include SEIU United Service Workers West, SEIU 10-1, IFPTE Local 21, ILWU Local 10, Trader Joe's United Local 4, the IWW Bay Area chapter, the Oakland Teachers Union, the San Francisco Teachers Union, Ask Me Local 3299, and Unite Here Local 2. And there's other unions like the grad workers at UAW 2865 and UAW 5810 that had already come out in support of BDS and Palestinian liberation previously, but we were able to get their Berkeley chapters to endorse our rally. And that rally was also endorsed by a number of groups, including PYM, AROC, and other formal and informal organizations also came out for the rally. We were really excited to be working with them. And so, what did we saw to get these units on board with these demands? And so I'm going to start with a more abstract and move to answer that question. So to start with the abstract, I think it's useful to think about, this is from Gramsci, I'm cribbing the concept of a war of maneuver versus a war of position. Is a direct revolution against the ruling class. You can also think of it as a time when there's outright confrontation with the class on a mass level, and compare that to a war of position, which is a time to build strength, gather forces, and engage in political agitation within your kind of existing organizations and institutions. So effectively, right, there's moments where you're building your strength with what you have and kind of consolidating. And then there's moments where you're confronting the ruling class directly and openly. And I think it's really useful to know when you're more in one or the other. Of course, these abstractions are never quite so neat in real life, but it's helpful to know, am I in a moment where we need to be challenging the ruling class directly, or do we need to be building our organizational power and capacity for the next open confrontation? And so going back a few years, I joined East Bay DSA in the fall of 2020. This was at the tail end of a very exciting labor solidarity campaign with the workers on strike at Alameda Health System. Folks may remember this, but the nurses shut down the healthcare system, not just for a number of pandemic health and safety demands, but also demanding that their bosses be fired. And they were successful in getting the board of trustees of the health system fired and winning a lot of their other demands. And so that was a really exciting time to get involved in a socialist organization. But once that strike was over, there wasn't another galvanizing public struggle in labor for us to latch onto on the horizon. That's not an issue that was unique to East Bay DSA or the Bay Area, right? Like in the fall of 2020, that was a pretty rough time to be on the left. Not only was the pandemic itself kind of inherently demobilizing because, right, it atomized us. We needed to stay home or, stay away from big crowds as much as we could. And that was made even worse by the fact that, in the summer, we saw the ruling class successfully do a combination of co-optation, repression, and beating back of the uprisings for racial justice that happened all over the country. And immediately before that was the kind of deflating end of the Bernie Sanders primary challenge in 2020. So there was kind of this series of really direct confrontations with the ruling class that I'm not criticizing anyone for not overthrowing capitalism in the fall of 2020, but it's just the reality that people had really hit their all that year on a variety of fronts and kind of back. And so heading into 2021 in East Bay DSA, what a lot of us did was kind of regroup and do what I would kind of characterize as preparing for a war of position, right? We were getting ready to regroup because we had kind of exhausted our, direct challenge to the ruling class. So we kind of entered into a phase of regrouping. On the labor front, there are a few things we did. We started a jobs program, which was encouraging East Bay DSA members and other socialists and like-minded people to get jobs at strategic workplaces, both union and non-union. So Amazon, the Oakland Unified School District, and UPS were three of the main places we tried to get our members to get jobs. We launched a local emergency workplace organizing committee, or EWOC, if folks are familiar with that group. That organization will help people organize non-union workplaces or win, other demands besides unionizing your workplace, like different issue campaigns, health and safety, in your workplace. And the last thing we did was make sure that we were educating our members on the centrality of labor to winning socialism in the United States, which, to just state it briefly, is that one of our biggest points of leverage against the ruling class in capitalism is our ability to interrupt the production process, right? Our ability to withhold our labor. And so we didn't, only turn inwards. We still kept an eye out for local labor struggles, which is why in 2022, we also supported the UAW strike at UC Berkeley. And actually dozens of our members are UAW members at Berkeley. So there was a lot of cross-pollination there. And then in 2023, when the Oakland teachers went on strike, we have about 36 members of DSA who are Oakland teachers. So we were able to coordinate with them. We raised about $50,000 for teachers, students, and families who needed food while the strike was ongoing, because a lot of families and kids rely on schools as a source of food. And so we tried to limit the extent to which that was a problem for families. But in short, over the last couple of years, we've been building our relationships with and presence within unions so that at the next moment of crisis, we could be in a position to making meaningful intervention in the local labor movement. And so in addition to the dozens of teachers in Oakland I mentioned, we also have more than a half dozen East Bay DSA members who are UPS workers. We have folks who are at Amazon warehouses around the Bay Area trying to figure out how to organize. And I would argue that now the Palestinian liberation struggle has launched us into a new moment of rupture, a new, direct confrontation with the ruling class. And thanks to our organizing over the last few years, we've been in a position to make a meaningful intervention in solidarity with the Palestinian liberation struggle. And so that's why we launched Bay Area Labor for Palestine. Is we have all of these members who are in unions around the Bay Area, and what people need is tools to move their unions in a positive direction. Some unions, they might already support a ceasefire. So now that means, how do we get them to support BDS? Or if you can't even get your union to vote on a ceasefire resolution, how do you start building a reform caucus that's not going to only take on this issue of Palestinian liberation, but also going to make your union more democratic so that you can intervene in a wide variety of struggles and really make your union a vehicle for class struggle, right? So that's what we're trying to do in the Bay Area with our DSA chapter and with labor. And I think it'll be really exciting to see what happens next. We were really focused on this rally in December. We're now kind of regrouping within Bay Area Labor for Palestine and hoping to hold some kind of public-facing conference maybe later this winter to talk about what the various next steps are for different unions. Again, whether that's getting a more pro-Palestinian union like the UAW, which now their international has called for a ceasefire. So how do you move BDS or stronger demands? And I think one thing that'll be really important is that we figure out how to keep Bay Area Labor for Palestine a space that, union members and people who maybe don't necessarily think of themselves as socialists or activists, but do care about this issue and care about their unions, keep it a space that is, hospitable to those folks and that they want to keep coming back to. And I think the last thing I'll say is we need to figure out how to push local labor councils to stand up to the AFL-CIO. The AFL-CIO has actually been actively repressing labor councils from putting out resolutions in support of ceasefire. And so we're going to need to pressure, the Alameda and Contra Costa labor councils to do the right thing on this, because they are going to face blowback from the AFL-CIO for doing so. Oh, yeah. And then, there's going to be a bunch of actions, but there will be, and I'm sure we'll maybe end with announcements about those, but there will be a block the boat action on the 13th, which I'm sure a lot of our members will be at. So I think with that, hopefully I didn't go over time, and I'll hand it back.